Sweden is suffering from a shooting epidemic. Last year, violence driven by drug trafficking resulted in more than 340 incidents involving firearms, without even counting multiple bomb attacks. In total, there were almost 50 deaths, most of which were linked to organised crime.
A surge in gun crime here and nationwide has made Sweden one of the worst countries in Europe for gangland shootings.
This Scandinavian country has gone from having the lowest rate of gun violence to one of the highest on the continent in less than a decade. And this year, a new record is on the way. The violence is mainly the result of score-settling accounts between gangs in the three main areas of the country. However, it is in the south, in Malmö, that a clan war has shaken Sweden and has spread beyond its borders to Spain and England. To understand it all, let's go back a decade to when one of the major gang wars in Malmö, involving two rival criminal networks, took place. Faction M, led by Mocro Mafia, and Faction K, led by Valdet Cooper, both rose through the ranks of local organised crime without major conflict until a shootout in August 2009, in which Mertes, 23 years old and Mirza's brother, died. Then it was the turn of Mevla, Valdet Cooper's brother, to succumb to bullets in retaliation. This will trigger an all-out war in the underworld, with revenge attacks described as inevitable by the police. Numerous incidents linked to the two factions will be recorded for years, with finally Ashkan Abedi shot dead in a shopping centre car park in January 2015. His brother Amir was convicted of the Mertes murder. As time passed, the storm passed, and the two respective leaders faded from the criminal landscape into the shadows. However, one of the leaders of the faction M, Amir Mekky, continued to manage his criminal activities by governing the younger ones. In 2015, Amir told the court that he had made peace with his former enemies and that there was no threat to him. However, he was subsequently murdered in late February 2016.
Den 30-åriga mannen som sköts till döds natten mot måndag var ett känt namn i Malmös undre värld. Han tillhörde ett sammansvetsat kompisgäng, den så kallade M-falangen, som stämplats som extremt farliga av polisens mordutredare. 30-åringen anses ha haft en ledande roll i gänget.
Suspicions turned to a long list of suspects, including a bunch of guys from the Seved neighborhood in Sofilund. Nevertheless, the murder still remains unsolved. In any case, it was at this point that Amir Mekky, together with his Seved crew, took the opportunity to make his criminal peak. Amir, despite his young age, has climbed rapidly in the hierarchy of the faction M, which will make him a central element in these new redistributions of cards. Thus, the group around Mekky, which is also linked to the Rosengård district, will be the main suspect cited in the next eliminations of people linked to the faction K. But also, other youngsters from the neighborhoods are involved in drug trafficking, including a tragic story of a trio of brothers called M. The first to be murdered was Akram. The day before his funeral, his brother Maysam receives a visit from his best friend Momme, who has a proposition to make to him from another criminal linked to Ahmad Jawad. The latter wants to eliminate Maysam's friend, nicknamed Jazz, and Maysam could lead him into an ambush in exchange for money. But instead of putting blood on his conscience, Maysam decided to warn Jazz about the potential contract that was placed on his head. Jazz temporarily escapes. Soon after, Momme makes a regular appointment with his friend Maysam. The two leave for the Dan Sorgatan district, Once parked, Momme gets out of the car and tells Meysem that he will be right back after selling drugs to a customer. Meysem sees him drive away in his rearview mirror. After a few seconds, gunfire breaks out. Someone else shoots at the car from behind. The gunman then moves forward, closer to the car, and continues shooting.
Någon kommer här bakifrån, skjuter mot bilen och mot 25-åringen som sitter i bilen och blir allvarligt skadad.
Meysem is trapped under bullets but survives thanks to his bulletproof vest. It turns out that Meysem's best friend Momme had also set him up because he had been promised money to sell his friend. He will be sentenced to 12 years in prison for complicity.
Mannen överlever den här allvarliga skjutningen och i rättegången och åtalet mot den bästa kompisen så framkommer det att han har sålt ut sin vän.
It has become a real business in Malmö. Indeed, Meysem had noticed that it was enough to take a friend to a certain place where killers could execute him for about 20,000 euros. This phenomena of selling a friend has occurred in several murder investigations in the city, because as police officer Jonas Karlberg confirms, loyalties have become looser in recent years and the structures between criminal groups have been unstable since 2016. And according to Pa Andersson, the gangster murders in Malmö are mostly contract killings, otherwise they would not have happened. Continuing the story, the day after the failed Meysem hit, the main mission will be completed with the assassination of Jazz in Rosengård, when the killers surprise him from behind. But this is not the first time the 23-year-old has appeared in the case. Indeed, he was also the first witness at the scene after a shooting of a 16-year-old boy in January 2017 in Rosengård. He had noticed that the kid was wearing the same jacket as him. That is why Jazz had told the police that he thought the boy had been shot by mistake, and that he was the one the killers were looking for. Now, according to all accounts, the 23-year-old was the real target of homicide. However, Jazz was not spared, and Salam Shebani was sentenced to life imprisonment, among others, for having ordered the murder.
Salam Shebani, 29 år, även känd som El Patron, har åtalats för att ha beställt mord i Malmös undre värld. Och idag föll domen. Salam Shebani döms till livstidsfängelse för ett fall av anstiftan till mord samt försök till mord och grovt penningtvättsbrott. Han var länge internationellt efterlyst innan han kunde gripas i Spanien och han har bland annat vistats i Dubai där han har bankkontakter.
Jawad, the shooter, got 18 years. The reason for this act is said to be a jealousy drama over a woman. Indeed, Salam was allegedly dating Jazz's ex-girlfriend. As time went on, the conflict escalated, with other factors causing the situation to get worse. Let's go back to Meysem's story. A few days after his assassination attempt, he is visited by a childhood friend connected to Seved's team, who offers him money to keep quiet about who was behind the executions. However, the money is not comparable to what his brother Akram's life was worth, so he decides not to keep silent. In reaction to this, in the summer of 2017, someone fired an automatic weapon at his mother's flat in Rosengård. And finally, the third brother was murdered on 14th of January 2018 in the street. Several criminal groups in the city have merged their forces into a temporary alliance with the sole aim of fighting Amir's network and taking control of the drug trade in the whole south. At the head of the new alliance would be Daniel Petrovski, nicknamed Danny Jude, suspected of being one of Sweden's biggest international drug smugglers. It all started with a kidnapping in 2018.
Det är den 7 juni 2018. En ung man kidnappas på Eriksdalsgatan i närheten av Värnhem i Malmö.
It is an individual from Danny's family. The latter reappeared after a few days, remaining silent in front of the police.
Polisen, som den blodiga våldsspiralen i Malmö, startar.
In response, one of the worst gang shootings in Sweden takes place.
3 personer skjuts då ihjäl på ett internetcafé på Drottninggatan. Kulorna från en Kalashnikov träffar sammanlagt 6 personer.
The main target of this revenge, Amir Mekky, miraculously survived the drive-by. Faced with a considerable threat, he decides to flee with part of his gang to Spain. However, the wave of violence will continue on Swedish soil between the two networks.
Sam Ho is a former high-ranking gang member in Malmö. Now he works with young people to try and keep them out of criminal gangs. We meet in Värnhem, scene of a triple murder in 2018 and where there was another deadly shooting last week.
Young gang members don't realize what they are getting into, but things escalate quickly. They don't have trust in the authorities and they don't have other opportunities. Study, wait for a good job. They don't have patience for that. It's fast money that counts.
As the criminals have pointed out, all hell is about to break loose, and it's best to stay home as innocent people may be affected. Then come the various murders connected to the two respective teams, with finally the murder of a young mother named Caroline Hakim, which has shaken public opinion in Sweden.
Före 10 en måndag förmiddag i Malmö när 31-åriga Carolina Kim skjuts ihjäl framför ögonen på chockade Malmöbor. I famnen bär hon sitt nyfödda barn.
Caroline was in the company of her husband, Naif Adawi, who was holding their 2-month-old baby. Suddenly, Naif handed the child to his wife and started to run when he saw 2 men approaching, who started shooting at him. He manages to escape, but Caroline's fate is different. She collapses on the pavement after being shot in the head, and the child remains unharmed in her arms.
Jag kunde mer krama henne och pussa henne. Och jag stannade där hos henne.
In this video, the shooter can be seen fleeing the scene of the crime. Despite the passing years, the investigation is still ongoing. The real target was probably her partner, Naif, who is known to have been involved in one of the biggest robberies in Denmark. In any case, he was on the list of suspects around Danny's crew. The violent spiral continues with the execution of a mafia gangster in London, Flamur Bekiri. Prosecutors say Flamur, shot dead outside his home, was part of the escalating violence between the two rival Swedish networks. The Albanian-Swedish national was a close associate of Danny Jude and also a long-time good friend of Naif. He was therefore the direct target of Mekky's organization. This assassination was meticulously planned for months, involving many individuals. For example, here, the alleged shooter, Anis Hemisi, can be seen staking out the Flamur neighborhood a few days before the attack while disguised as a street cleaner wearing a latex mask.
The situation in Sweden is being driven by drugs and money in a totally different way to how it used to be.
And finally, let's go back to the Mekky crew, who, fleeing the bloody war in Sweden, continued their criminal practices in the south of Spain, in the Costa del Sol. It was there that they earned their reputation as one of the most violent groups ever to ravage the tourist paradise known as Los Suecos by the media. This is a network of Swedish hitmen led by Amir Mekky and his brother Fakhri. In May 2018, they executed David Avila Ramos, also known as Maradona, when a man on a scooter shot him. Maradona was a notorious drug dealer who was allegedly killed because of a huge debt to suppliers. The next target would be another Moroccan trafficker named El Zocato. The latter had collaborated with Mekky before, but it seems that a dispute over payment for their services had arisen.
Y van a ver ahora la secuencia de una ejecución en plena calle. Ha sucedido en Marbella y es una escena muy dura, se lo advertimos.
Indeed, a few hours after their meeting in the port of Marbella, Zocato was about to leave his luxury villa when a man wearing a balaclava was waiting for him at his home to kill him before fleeing on his bicycle. It was the close cooperation of Swedish and Spanish police that helped solve these incidents and find the gang members. On 30th of November 2018, the Spanish police carried out several raids on luxury properties where the Swedes lived. In total, 9 of them were arrested jointly in Malaga and Malmö. However, Amir Mekky escaped this arrest by going on the run again a few weeks before.
Medan vi i de andra 2 fallen har vad polisen beskriver som misstänkta beställningsmord där en liga från Malmö ska utpekas för att ha mördat 2 olika personer inom droghandeln på uppdrag av annan.
The hunt for Mekky had been a central objective of the Swedish police for years. The police had been secretly monitoring the operations of his network. They suspected that Mekky was running an organization that supplied Sweden with drugs from Spain. The idea was to kill 2 birds with 1 stone and stop both the drug trade and the leader. This was a difficult task to achieve, given the limited evidence available against the leader. Finally, one element was added to the investigation. It was the trapped drivers who used a secret transshipment center in Malmö that allowed drugs to be transported to the rest of the country. However, the operation to prosecute the smuggling leader was unsuccessful, as the convicts remained silent. What is clear is that police efforts were in full swing, but there was no evidence to pursue the leader of the gang until the Spanish police revealed that they were tracking the same group in Spain. Thus, their collaboration helped to shake up the network. Finally, after a year and a half on the run, Amir will be caught in Dubai in June 2020. The choice of Dubai is not surprising, as he was apparently linked to one of the most wanted traffickers in the Netherlands at that time, Ridouan Taghi. Their 2 organizations had already collaborated in Spain. Finally, the police revealed this bloody spiral of revenge on Swedish soil between the group around Mekky and Danny Jude. Thanks to EncroChat's decryption, 15 members of Danny's team are accused of, among other things, several preparations for murder. Indeed, the police prevented at least 5 executions of the rival team. Finally, after this year's trial, 13 out of 15 members were convicted. It now remains to be seen what the next step will be in all these rivalries in the Malmö underworld.